And welcome to the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn Hunter, and occasional guests guide you through the world of online communications in a show which is the brainchild of the late great guru, John Popham. So we welcome our special guest today, Kevin Lewis. Kevin, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather there?
The weather is windy and loud because it's windy. I'm doing pretty okay, but I overcompensated this morning and the house is really warm, so I'm extremely warm. And I'm currently in Grantham, Lincolnshire, which is somewhere near Nottingham, Lincoln, Leicester in the East Midlands.
Very nice, very nice. Sweyn, what about yourself? How are things there?
I'm in Orkney as usual in Kirkwall, and it's a bit breezy, but it's very bright. And having said that, there's a big grey cloud scudding by. Yeah, we've got all the weather as usual. We've had although we have had less of the two storms, the Dudley storm and the Eunice storm, than many places in the country. Just for once, we've had less of them. So we're looking forward to Ferdinand or whatever it's called.
Franklin,
that's the one.
Yeah. Yes, and here in Birmingham, as you can see, it's very bright and sunny. I'll probably go away in a bit, but it's lovely. And I'm hoping to get out later on. This dry on the pavement outside, so always a good thing to see. So Kevin, you know Birmingham, don't you? You lived here at one stage, or you lived in the area?
Right. Yeah, I lived in Birmingham for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Lovely city, warm place in my heart.
Good to hear. So we'll cover a few things first, Kevin, and then we'll come on to you if you don't mind, if that's okay. So Sweyn, do you want to lead off or shall I?
On you go. I should warn you that the first website is not displaying. So.
Oh, okay. Right. Well, we'll say what it is, and we'll put it in the links on the YouTube afterwards, so all of our listeners can follow along. So hello to T and Paul and anyone else who's listening. So yesterday, 20th of February, it was World Day of Social Justice. One of the UN days, and the blurb from that is call for social justice in the digital economy. The digital economy is transforming the world of work, and over the past decade, expansion in broadband connectivity, cloud computing, and data have led to the proliferation of digital platforms, which have penetrated several sectors of the economy and societies. Since early 2020, the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic have led to remote working arrangements and allowed for the continuation of many business activities, further reinforcing the growth and impact of the digital economy. The crisis has also laid bare and exacerbated the growing digital divide within, between, and across developed and developing countries, particularly in terms of the availability, affordability, and use of information ICTs and access to the internet, deepening existing inequalities. And obviously on our show, we aim to decrease some of those inequalities and talk and highlight them as well, so we can bring them to attention of other people. So we hope that people listen and learn from what we are covering. For the event this week, we've got one from SCVO in Scotland on the 23rd of February. On Wednesday, they're running a session called Applying a Place-Based Approach to Digital Inclusion, what they've learned so far. And for the last 9 months, SCVO have been developing a new place-based approach to digital inclusion. And this approach puts people at the heart of service design and involves stakeholders working collaboratively at a local level to tackle digital exclusion. And at this event, they're excited to share their learning so far and explore how they can support more places to develop solutions that work for them. And we really enjoy seeing, different developments in different parts of the UK and parts of the world as well. We pick up stories along the way, and this is a great one to have. And last week there was one on Wales on digital inclusion as well. So I think there's great stuff happening in the four nations that we're really excited to pick up on. And so we'll come on to our very special guest today, Kevin Lewis. Kevin is a senior developer advocate at Deepgram, where he helps developers discover and build with speed recognition APIs. And he's also director of You Got This, which is a learning hub and event series focused on core skills. And we can share the links after the show with people on YouTube. In the past, he has run a developer events agency, tech education programs, and written lots of code. Kevin says he's an avid board gamer, tired dad, and shameless Disney adult. So Kevin, you're very welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very, very much for having me.
Great to see you again after all this time. We were just saying earlier how we haven't had a long conversation. This is probably going to be the longest conversation we've had since I've known you, Kevin, and that's going back a few years now. Do you want to tell us about your kind of how you got into digital and kind of that stuff? We can see from behind you, you're into various things around the digital sphere. So please, away with you and tell us all about yourself.
Yeah, so I first got into tech because a friend of mine dragged me along to a hackathon. For those of you who might not be familiar with this term, a hackathon is basically an invention marathon. You get a bunch of people together, primarily software developers, but there's space for all kinds of disciplines at these events. People are given a challenge and a very short amount of time, anywhere from an afternoon to 3 days, and they build kind of very scrappy solutions to the problems and the challenges that are posed in a bid to either validate an idea or know that, okay, that idea isn't going to work, but we've only really invested 2 or 3 days into it. So I went along to this event with a friend who basically bullied me into it, couldn't write any code at all. But I had an awesome time, really, really good. And that was a civic tech hackathon, so all around GovTech. And I kind of caught the bug from there. So I, went away and started to teach myself how to code. And I think a bulk of my initial knowledge came from having to very quickly learn to build projects at hackathons. And that was kind of my entry point, yeah.
Great. And what age were you then, Kevin?
I think the first event I went to, I would have been 14.
Great. So it's great to see, and that's obviously still happening now. The young people as young as that can go to events around the country. It's great to see it happening, girls and boys doing this together. It's a great socialization, and I think it's probably some of the places where we've met along the way at various events. So after that, how did your kind of life develop and your education around in that area?
Yeah, so I did school, started college, absolutely hated college, and I ended up, I have skipped a step. So I went to a bunch of these hackathons, primarily run by 2 or 3 companies, and one of them had an internship going. I started college, really disliked it, applied for the internship and got it. And dropped out of college, and that was a good call. At that point, I already knew how to code well enough to get by. I wasn't really gaining anything, and I think I very much was on a path that, I think a lot of young people think there's a defined path. You do school, you do college, you go to uni, you join a grad scheme, and so on. But I broke out of that. And I worked in that company for a couple of years, and that was kind of my introduction into the world of developer relations, developer advocacy, which is a very, very loaded role that means a different thing in every business, but basically means, as you said in my little intro, helping developers discover, understand and be successful with a company's products. So somewhere between developer marketing, but as done by developers. And building tooling to help developers use stuff. And that was kind of it. So yeah, I did some developer advocacy roles. I ended up seeing a really cool degree program at Goldsmiths University of London. For those of you who don't know Goldsmiths, it is a weird liberal arts uni in Southeast London. So I saw a degree program there and applied and went and did that after a few years of doing developer advocacy and eventually freelancing. So that was creative computing. Started my developer events agency while I was a student there and ran that after I graduated for a bit. And then closed that down in January 2020. What good timing for an events agency to shut their doors. And since then, I've done a few developer advocacy roles, kind of more focused on developer education. So creating fun demos and educational material surrounding them to help people learn how to code or code with a product.
Well, our founder, John Popman, who founded this show and sadly passed away now, but we've kept it going. I was going to say something. Oh yeah, he started this program in like as a response to lockdown and kind of people getting online, some for the first time. So how has lockdown been for you? How's your past couple of years been?
It's been varied. So the lockdown started in March-ish 2020. We had our kid in July. So she was a pandemic baby. That was very mixed. I know you might be asking more in terms of digital, but that was very mixed. Didn't have anyone around to stick the dishwasher on for us. So we're very, very locked down. But we also realized we weren't missing London, which is where we lived for a few years. We weren't missing this incredibly expensive city. And we have a kid now. Everything needs planning. So we moved and we could buy a house not in London. And so we moved to Grantham. In terms of work, that has also been very interesting. So I started a job in January 2020 when I shut my business down. And I was only in that 6 weeks before never going to the office again. Did that job for a year and 3 or 4 months. Started a job in lockdown, my first fully remote job where the expectation is you're never going to go into an office here. Did that for 5 months. That one didn't quite work out, and now started a third role kind of towards the end of last year. That one isn't only fully remote, but I'm only one of 2 people in the UK.
Wow.
So
basically everyone else is in the US. So I also have like this time zone split, which has been a very difficult adjustment actually, but I'm kind of there now.
So you're working from lunchtime to late, as it were?
No, I still work my hours. Like I'm not, I can't, if I do that, I'll never ever do anything else with my life. No, I start, 9, 10-ish. I go till 5 or 6-ish with the odd evening meeting. And everyone's been really, really good at that. But I love people. I'm a really social person. And so I'm, at the beginning, I very much felt very lonely most of the day. No one's around till 4 p.m. By which point I'm already starting to wind down for the day. But I've now got used to it to the point where I'm actually just being left alone uninterrupted for a good few hours. I'm being way more productive, and then I'm making the most of those few crossover hours.
It's one of the things about everyone working remotely like this has been the advent of the age of the importance of time zones for many more people than it used to be the case for. It's been quite interesting, I think. Anyway, I can bore on that subject. So please ask another question.
Have you attended many online events, Kevin, outside of work during lockdown?
Outside of work, probably not, because there are a lot of events as part of my work. But I've been to a load of online events, conferences, meetups, workshops, hackathons as well. I don't think online hackathons work very well, in my opinion, but all the others, they work well enough. I mean, I run my own event series too, and the thing I've observed is this idea of networking at online events is very awkward. Like it just doesn't work for me. My event series is also about core skills, and people make themselves quite vulnerable when they talk about themes that we discuss in our events. Doing that behind the screen just isn't happening. So I've actually just got rid of it. Okay. We won't do the networking for online events. This is all about knowledge and building a resource library. And when we get back to in-person, I tried like 3 or 4 permutations of like online networking events I ran, and just none of them made sense. Right. None of them worked.
We'd be interested to hear what platforms you tried, because we've tried a few as well, and we tried one recently we really liked. So what have you tried?
So right, what have I tried? So we did the this is just a live stream platform. So YouTube, which I believe is where we're at now. Twitch. So the main difference between those is, on YouTube, you can turn off comments, which for moderation is potentially attractive. Twitch, you can't. You can kind of augment it in a way that makes it difficult to comment, or you have to pay money and be a subscriber to comment, but you can't turn it off. So I've tried those. In terms of online events platforms, also Zoom events as well, I've tried once. It wasn't really my jam personally. I've tried Hopin, Remo. Remo tries to very much emulate the offline event experience by having a bunch of tables, and every table is a video call, and you can kind of move around tables as long as there's a spare seat available for you, which is very interesting.
Yes.
And loads of platforms like Remo. There are quite a few of them now, AirMeet and others. What I've actually landed on is I don't like any of them, and I'm very opinionated. So what I've done is built my own platform just for my own use. It's not a product, and it is basically just a video live stream, live captions, the schedule, a Discord chat on the side that people can participate in, but it's all just on a platform. You don't need to log in or authenticate or anything. And that's it. So I ended up as a developer, I suppose that's a nice byproduct is when I am opinionated, nothing's quite hitting the spot. Hopin's probably the closest. It's just very expensive for community events, prohibitively expensive.
Right. Civic Square used that for their Festival of Dreams last year or the year before, and I really enjoyed it. It was like having a radio on the background, because I didn't participate in all the sessions. The other ones that we've used, Sweyn and I both, is Kiko Chat, which is like a skin on Zoom, and Wonder Me was the one we used only very recently. Yeah. We really like that one.
I've also tried what's it called now? They changed their name. Gather Round. It used to be called Icebreaker, but that is purely a networking event type platform. So there are multiple configurations, one-on-one or group A and group B or group calls, and you design these short sessions that are like 5 to 10 minutes with a few prompts, and then it randomly assigns people into little video calls, and they can go through the prompts and have a conversation. It's really cute. It's really nice, actually, but it isn't right for events that have content. I think they are purely networking.
Sure.
One of the other issues with online events and just people with different levels of technical confidence is the moment things go across 2 different platforms, you lose people. Someone once used the analogy that it's like running a meetup and then walking to the pub. People will fall away or get lost between the 2 venues. Exactly the same thing online, but there's no ability to get them back, really. So none of these platforms, I think, do the networking and the content well. And that is maybe an area for improvement. Maybe there is a networking thing that works, but I've not even seen it work in integrated platforms, really, because people spend all day in video calls, chatting with people.
I suppose my only hope is that as people spend less time forced to be in video calls, that at least some events will be hybrid enough or online enough and interesting enough for people to make that investment of their ear tolerance for headphones and so on and so on. I think I'm really anxious that we don't lose all of what's been demonstrated during lockdown.
I don't think we can. I don't think we can. Like,
I think there's a risk that there'll be a bunch of really interesting events which which will go back to being in person, and a bunch of less interesting, maybe added on, maybe second thought type events that are run as online or hybrid events. And I would like to think that we can do best than that as we go forward. But who knows? I mean, we're in early days.
What I've seen is, again, taking my conference, right, which I've now run 3 times, the full day conference, not the meetups. I've run twice in person and 3 times online at this point. The online event cost an eighth to a tenth of the cost to run. I get a global audience, which you just physically can't get, and you just generally increase access. Also to your speaker pool, who can also take part remotely.
Absolutely.
I have some thoughts like that has to be attractive to other event organizers too. You Got This was not really a global event before the pandemic. It ran in the UK, once in London and once in Brum. And I have some thoughts about how to run fun hybrid formats. So we'll
on
see.
screen now the link to You Got This, and we had a quick look to this before the program started today, and it looks like very useful little segments. Some from some people whose names I recognise and some I don't, and useful for not just tech people either, Kevin.
Absolutely. In fact, I would say I would expand that at the very least to people in creative disciplines, and most talks are applicable to basically anyone, because these are skills that you just don't get taught and you have to work out generally through mucking it up. So there's a whole bunch of stuff here about, starting new jobs or being promoted in jobs, how to negotiate, how to advocate for yourself, what to do when things aren't going that well at work, how to make your work visible, how to write good CVs, things like this. And later in the year, that's all having a bit of an overhaul. So we'll be doing a better job of surfacing the great content library that we've managed to gain so far, and also adding articles. Right now, it's all video based. If you don't learn through videos, I got nothing for you. But by the end of the year, I'll have plenty for you.
Great. And how big an audience have you got at the moment?
Audience is a difficult one because I could count it in any number of ways. Conferences generally get about 600, 700 people live, and then each video gets maybe between, depending on the video, 50 to 250 views a month.
Yeah.
For me, exactly right. So I think the value is in that library afterwards.
Yeah.
But right now I've just dumped them all on a big list with some very, very basic tagging, and I can do better than that. So I'm working on that at the moment.
Brilliant. So the reason that we first got in touch again and kind of invited you on the show is because you've created something that I thought was really interesting. A transcription and translation device. So do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Yes, I wish I had it in my office right now, but it's with a friend who's printing a 3D case for it, designing and printing a 3D case for it. But the idea is that, or rather the problem, before I explain what it is, it's really hard to understand people with masks on. I mean, that's the problem. And I think we've all experienced that in some way, shape or form. I think I rely on subtle lip reading more than you ever think you do. And for some people who are hard of hearing, cannot understand someone with a mask on, just full stop, and not just as a supplementary device. So I work for a company called Deepgram. Deepgram has a speech recognition API. You give us audio with vocals in it and we tell you what was said. There's a little bit more data that comes with it that makes it useful for developers, but that's the basic gist. And so I built a small little badge you can wear, powered by a little Raspberry Pi Zero, tiny little computer with a touch screen on it. And there was a little mic that was kind of popped up here on my dungaree, strap, although that will all be part of a single case soon. And it listens to what you say, and then it displays it on the screen. So you get kind of like live self captions. There are a couple of other features. If it detects other voices around you, it won't show those. Or there's a mode where it does show those, and you could be the point, captioner for the group. And then finally, because there was a lot of demand for it, translation.
Great. And what languages do you translate into?
There was a pretty substantial list. I think there was like 50 languages, but that was all provided by a third-party API. So it's an API called iTranslate. They were bought by Snapchat, but they have a developer offering that was really lovely to work with. And it's their entire list of languages.
Yeah. So there is a video, a YouTube about the what you've created. It's about 25 minutes long. Yeah. So we can put the link in after the show again. So what stage is it at now?
It never was going to be in any stage of development, because I built it to take it to an event at the end of January for myself, threw a little video up for a couple of friends to see, and it kind of got a bit mad from there. So I added the reject other voices or show everyone's voices in different colors. I added the translation, and then in terms of features, I think that's enough. So right now the whole device is with my friend Lily, who does 3D modeling and printing, who is designing a case for it. Once that's done, the question mark, don't know. I think what Deepgram might end up doing is just buying a stock of pieces when they become available again, and then we it's not that this is going to become a commercial endeavor. We'll go and sell them, but we'll have little kits we can provide to people. At the moment, along with that video is an entire list of pieces, so people can go and buy all the pieces for themselves and follow the guide to put it together. And that video has like segments. There's segments which are good for software developers, where I talk through the code, and then on the top and tail are bits for people who aren't developers or don't really care about the code, on how they can just deploy their own version of the software. And then when the 3D case is designed, I'll be able to provide the file, which any 3D printer will take in and print, and people can print their own or send it to a commercial 3D printer.
So are you saying it's open source then?
Oh yeah. So the Deepgram part isn't the actual like real crux of it. Take in the voice, turn it into words. That's a paid offering, but the free tier is pretty generous. I think it's like 150-ish hours worth of, and then about $1 a minute ish. There are a few variables in there, but the actual software that kind of wraps Deepgram and turns it into that nice display that you can work with. The bill of goods, which is all the parts you need to buy, and the 3D printing file once it's completed, they're all just freely available.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm really impressed.
It looks really great in the video.
Thank you.
Just having you talk with the mask on and your words appear on a badge, it's incredible. It's amazing.
Yeah. Now stepping back, I go, of course that made sense because it's a problem everyone, of course it's a problem everyone understands, and I think most people have had to deal with in the last couple of years. On the spot, I didn't think about it at all. This is a cool little demo. Yeah. I wish I'd have known it was going to become popular. I would have done it from a nicer angle, but people see it and it just makes sense, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, the alternative, I suppose, for other people develop is the masks with the clear clear outline
just fog
of
up.
the mouth.
I've always had them fog up and they get all wet on the inside and grow. Like, I've tried so many versions of those. There's a new one from Razer that looks promising, but it's expensive. There are other options too. Like, most phones have the ability to do this kind of live transcription built in. There are a few caveats. One, generally less accurate. And it's a big heavy phone and you lose your phone to the transcription.
Exactly.
So this whole device was really, really light, which was quite nice.
The old thing, if your phone is doing a task, it's not a phone anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, I really like the idea. And I liked that someone I knew was making it, because it makes it very, very human, because I think a lot of people, the people I'm meeting in my work life around digital literacy, they still feel a bit alienated. They still feel stupid because they don't know things, and it's kind of hard to overcome that feeling in them. There's a lot of reassurance needed, and but this kind of is something that really is a no-brainer, and I'm sure it'll be. So if people wanted to follow it up themselves, what will be the next steps for them?
Yeah, so there is one more part of this story I forgot to mention, which is right now there's that video which you can run through, and I get to a point and I'm like, if you're not a software developer or you don't care about the guts of it, skip to this timestamp or whatever. Before I get on to the next step, there's been one negative with this, which is around setting expectations. I just built this cute little thing that I was going to take to an event, and I did my best to kind of build content around it that was accessible. I do a lot of like very early stage like education work for people who want to be software developers. So, I'm used to talking to people who don't know how to write code, or maybe are interested in understanding the concepts. But ultimately, this was a tool that I built for me, a developer, with code. To deploy it requires there's points where you have to type some code in, but I'm just like, you actually don't need to care about what this does. This is
I type
copy
these
and
words.
paste it. Exactly. but there's been a bit of a valley in the expectations. I found I had a few people get in touch who were like, so what's the next step? When's this going to be commercially available? When can I buy this? And the answer is, you can't. You can buy the bits, and I have a guide, but that's the end of the story for this. I personally have no intention of doing anything more than providing the casing around it so it's a bit more robust, but you can then buy it and put it together yourself. And I think a lot of people who got in touch with that were disappointed by my answer, but that's the truth. The one final step I missed is I will eventually, probably once the case is done, write a guide that is designed for non-technical people. And I will try and abstract away as much of the technical work as possible. But the reality is, it's a little computer built for people who generally know how to code, a little Raspberry Pi, and you have to jam these pins together and plug these things in and write these couple of commands. And I can't stop people doing that, but I might be able to take some of the work away from them, automate as much as possible. So
it doesn't sound like the sort of thing you would want to be offering an extended warranty on, for example.
No. But it's also the robustness was a concern of mine as well. Like, if you drop this thing, it's not designed to take take that. So there was a bit of a negative side there where I don't think people's expectations were the same as what I thought they would be, because it spread. Like, it went through NHS Twitter, clearly. It went through I'm not sure what the Spanish equivalent of NHS is, but they're like, health department. It went through them. It went through, with my, a lot of my community being in the civic tech space, it kind of went right through all of those groups, which is great. But in those groups, there are technical people, which is where stuff often started. There are lots of people who are generally practitioners who don't need to know how to write code. And the expectations as soon as it hit them were, oh, great, I'm going to get to follow along the development of this into something I can buy on the shelf. And that is not true. But I'll, yeah, I'll be writing a guide to try and
I think
make
that's
it more
great,
simple.
and that's often the thing that hasn't happened in for people in the past, that developers like yourself create something and then other people are trying to learn how to do it, and there's no written manual. And it's always an omission in a lot of projects I've been involved in, and I'm delighted to hear that you're going to address that gap. Do you get invited to go to talk at boot camps, Kevin? Because I know that's a growing area, and one we haven't talked about that much. But can you say a bit about that?
Yeah, so coding boot camps, people go in not
Yeah.
knowing how to code, and they come out with enough to, get an entry-level job. I have a few times, maybe half a dozen times, 10 times. What I generally find, though, is every company I've worked at, even within my team now, there are 2 or 3 people who have gone through a boot camp. And once you come out the other end of them, that generally isn't the end of the story. You become part of like an alumni network, and it's them who get invited and who go and have a chat with them. Sometimes I'll go and support, or sometimes they'll do an intro and I'll deliver stuff, but not really, because it isn't the pathway I personally had. That's what I've kind of observed, but I'd be certainly up for more of it.
Yeah, I know that Chris May at the School of Code in Birmingham often has speakers, and it'd be great. I haven't done one myself, but I know that other people have, so it's good. I love to see it happening, and it's good to see other people get involved as well. And Code Your Future as well is another group I've been giving some support to, writing about them in Digital WM News and stuff. And it's great to see it happening, especially again, more women get involved, and minoritized groups get involved in jobs that that pay well, which is brilliant to see. So people who might not have expected to have that well of a paying job can now do a job that's that there's only growth in, and people can benefit from. We were saying earlier about events and hybrid events. One of the guests we're having in a future show is Alistair Somerville, who writes a lot about access and hybrid events as well. So we're looking forward to hearing more from him about looking at those events as well. Has hybrid events been part of what you've been doing as well during lockdown?
Personally, very little, because I'm not ready to go back to in-person events. And it's my personal feeling, and there's no judgment here, but like, if people are trying to return to in-person events today, the number one thing an event organizer has on their plate is keeping people safe.
Ventilation.
Yeah.
Well, but just safety in all guises, safety from bad behavior, safety from a disease that is very very contagious right now, and I'm not ready to bear the ethical weight of bringing people together in a space.
I'm totally agreeing with you. I'm in the same space as you are.
I have done one hybrid event. I've done one hybrid event as a sponsor, a hackathon at the end of Jan, which I committed to before the Omicron variant became of concern. But because I'm only one of 2 people in the UK and the only one who could make it on the day, it was always going to, if I didn't go, we just would have an empty table, and I pushed hard to go to it, so I wanted to go to it. And one where I helped the organizers run the online side of an event they were running in person in Israel. And that one was rough. It was really, really rough. And I came away with a piece of learning, which I will share because it's very brief. It might be really tempting to just run an event in person, whack a camera on at the back and walk away from the computer because it all runs. But the moment there's some problem in that bridge between the in-person and online experience, it breaks. And I'm sitting there, I'm texting the 4 or 5 organizers in the room. We can't hear you, like someone needs to come sort it. So you have to have an additional team member whose whole role it is to sit at that computer and bridge the gap. At least one.
I've been trying to do this sort of thing for about 10 years due to geographical issues that I have with attending things, even in Inverness or Aberdeen, never mind Leeds, Grantham or London. But it is really hard. The one thing that the pandemic, I think, should have been able to show us is that some of it is actually technically possible. The technologies are there. What's not there, especially not for hybrid events, is as you said, joining the 2 bits together.
Yes, well, that's all I'm thinking about.
That's where all the new from here on work needs to go into, and it's one that I'm really, really keen on trying to make some progress with.
So there's one side.
There was a woman, I met at an event lately, was it Judy Reese? Was that her name? I think.
Oh, yeah,
Who
that's
seems to be
right, yeah.
specialising on this hybridness thing, and it's great to see a few people do that. Sorry, I interrupted, Kevin.
No, I thought I was in the clear and I interrupted. All good. So there's one side of it which is getting the content and making sure people have the same experience whether they're at home or in the room. That I don't think is that tricky. You just need you do genuinely just need an audio feed, a camera pointed at the thing, make sure you can see the slides, make sure that connection is sustained. That for me isn't the tricky bit. It's that part which I've basically given up on for online events, which is network. How do you build that experience that's the same? I've had a few concept ideas, but I'm not going to run an in-person event probably for a couple of years still. So I've got plenty of time.
By the time you come to that, everything will have changed anyway. And hopefully some people will have done some more learning that we can actually piggyback onto. It's great. Just what I'm really liking the look of is people who are alive to the issue. Because it's very easy to think that because we can do this sort of thing, person to person to person to person, all online, that, as you say, just bunging that in the corner of a meeting room is going to work later. It's not going to work like that.
It's not.
Especially not for networking, and especially not. I mean, there's all sorts of things you can do. You can try to set expectations about online as opposed to in-person attendance. You can simply say, I'm not going to do hybrid, I'm going to do an in-person event one day, and I'm going to do an analog of that event digitally. That doesn't make sense. But anyway, some other day. Or you can try to actually run them side by side with some limited interaction between the two. And once we begin to understand how some of that can work, then we might be able to integrate them all more closely. But there's a lot of it's not just work for organizers to do, it's work for attendees to do as well.
Because I have sorry.
No, go ahead.
I have one idea. So for you, this is the first time I'm talking about the upcoming conferences. Next year, so far it's been UK time zone, 10 till 6 p.m., 10 till 7 p.m., something like that. One stream, one day. Next year, I'm going to run a 26-hour event. It's going to run from 10 a.m. UK through to midnight the next day. There'll be 3 teams running it. So I'll hand off to someone in the US, they'll hand off to someone in India, and it will be like this one continuous stream. And that's just readying people for this idea that it's about to become a longer event with regional centers. And what I'm thinking of doing on the next return to in-person, which will probably be January 24, is it is an event where there are 3 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. events. And assuming that there'll be UK, East Coast, West Coast, US, that means it will end at 3 a.m. UK the next day. So that's the time zone we're talking about. Now, each one of those events will have some in-person speakers, and those in-person speakers will be streamed to all the other venues and online. So part of each event will be a physical, great, I get 2, 3, 4 speakers here in person. This is really enjoyable. I can go chat to them in the break. Part of it will be a watch party. So everyone kind of gets that online experience, single thread for how you ask questions, which will be online. So you can't just be like, I want to ask a question. No, you go through the same Q&A platform that people remotely are doing. So now everyone can interact together. And then that means your speakers can apply to speak in a location or online. Your attendees can go to a physical location or online. And I think there'll be some nice camaraderie around these spaces that otherwise would lack. So that's kind of something I'm thinking
that sounds
about.
Like a huge step in the right direction for events as far as I'm. Kevin, you've gone off.
Yeah, it's all right. Sometimes look, Nat, this is the real color of my room before the color kicks in. You ready? There we are.
Nice. There we are. Lovely.
No, that sounds amazing. I know of lots of events which wouldn't be trying to do that for 26 hours. We'll just be trying to do one of those locations.
That will be online, and then it will go, and then it will be less long, but still a slog.
Two events that I have experience of attending online and slightly hybrid. One was the Edinburgh Book Festival this past year. They've gone from being completely in person in a huge hall with authors on the stage to a truly hybrid mode in a smaller venue. And again, the questions are all coming in the same way, online and offline. And the online attendees get a bit of an introduction from the host speaking directly to camera, and then everybody claps while they run an intro while everybody takes their place on the stage. They can have guests on the stage on a screen or in a chair.
Yeah,
and they put a lot of effort into this, and it worked.
That's what I'm thinking about. Oh, and smaller events. What one thing, a load of people who haven't organized events don't understand how magnitudes of scale impact events. You can get probably a company office for 80 people for free, and they'll just give you it to promote their business in the space. Then you go up to 100, 120, 150, 200 people. The last event we ran in person was at Millennium Point, which seated 330, and that's a venue in Birmingham that I love very much. Oh my God, the cost difference in that £80 free, 80 people free event, or even 120 person small venue, even going up another 50 people, doubles, triples the cost. It's absolutely crazy.
The second event I attended was one of the champions of getting their event online, in my view, was a festival that it calls itself a festival of philosophy and music. It's actually kind of sciencey, bunch of debates basically. And it's been going a good few years, called How the Light Gets In. It runs on Hay NY, a parallel to the Hay Festival. And they, by May 2020, had their entire online multi-venue site online in a website, and you could go into each venue and listen to the debates. They had small group Zoom calls, which were like their meet the panel type sessions, which that you could pay extra for if you wanted to. And it was amazing. And the online chat there's technical people in every chat answering every question you can imagine. They did that for about 12, they have about 2-3 events a year. They did that across about 18 months. And then the last event they had, I can't remember, was it in September? They had a hybrid version. And I thought, oh, this is good. And I attended it as an online attendee, and it felt like all the online space was completely empty. You couldn't even ask a question because nobody was listening. It looked great. And
I was really hoping for a positive story there.
Me too.
No, it's just one positive, one negative. She told me the other way around. It was a kind of cautionary tale, and I've never been able to quite work out whether it was just it was only a 1 day as opposed to 3 or 4 day event that they did, and it was obviously a tryout. But I felt that the online experience was nothing like the in-person experience. Also, nothing like the previous online experience. And I just found it was really interesting because I'm involved in running stuff as well, and I could just see what they'd done. I could understand all the choices they had made, but they wasn't something. It wasn't something you'd want to go to. Yeah, you know. But anyway, that was. It's really interesting to hear you talk about the how to get those details, as some might see them, those crucial features. Yeah. Right.
That screams to me what you've just described as who are their audience, and if they got a majority of their audience, if they didn't grow their audience by going online, they just took their audience and it just went online. The
audience they had online was completely different from the audience.
Oh, interesting. They just didn't come back, or they went in person.
What they're focused on is getting back in to have all the tents in the field and all the music going, and all the tents up and all that stuff. Quite rightly, a huge effort during. It was during pre-Omicron, so it was as things were opening up over the summer, and I can quite understand that they would want to do that because they've got to save their old event. But if they're going to attract, if they want to morph it into something kind of hybrid, they're going to have to think more than they have. I think they maybe decide not to. And also for me, I will now, having been twice online, I will go to that event in person one day. I'll do that. That'll be my summer holiday one year, and that'll be that. But there's no way I can go to each of their events in London and Hay and other places like that, as I would have hoped, as I have been to all of their online or hybrid versions. But that's okay. If that's what they decide they want to do, then that's fine. I'll find somewhere else to go. What I hope they don't do is try and kind of do both badly, or try and do the online, the in-person one as well as they ever have, and it obviously is very enjoyable because it's got a very loyal following.
Shoehorn in the online,
and then they shouldn't waste their effort on a poor online aspect to it. That's what I think.
It did occur to me when lockdown first started that a whole slew of new jobs were out there now, like Zoom drivers, people who knew how to work Zoom. Because I'm very proud of the fact that before March 2020, in fact, the previous year, I think it was, I installed Zoom on my mother's tablet on her iPad, because I was one of those people like ourselves, both of us, three of us, who kind of is out there kind of noticing things, what's happening, and kind of playing with them before they become popular. So I knew Zoom was out there. But as I say, March 2020, suddenly everybody was using Zoom, and lots of people didn't know how to use it and use it badly and stuff like that. So I'm not sure those jobs ever really manifested, actually, but I do know that people with Zoom skills are valuable at events. Like Sweyn, you've been very kind to volunteer at several events with your kind of skills in that area. Kevin, is volunteering with your technical skills something that you have time to do now, or have you got too much?
Yeah. One thing on the Zoom thing, that is one of the only bonuses of Zoom events, which is an okay platform, is it uses a piece of software that more and more people are familiar with now, rather than trying to throw them into yet another new platform they need to learn. So I think that's basically the only thing they have going for it. Volunteering. So most of my volunteering I love talking events. Like, I love helping people run good events. I love helping them avoid problems through my experience, and firefighting when they do happen. Most of the ways that has manifested in the last couple of years has been, I have 3 1-hour calls with you, and then you have my phone number, and on the day you're freaking out about something, and this has happened, you give me a ring, you tell me what the problem is, and I'll tell you how to fix it, and you can go away and do it. You don't even need to be there in the space. That's been mostly how it's manifested. So it's been I think events are 90% the prep. So I can help you make sure that prep is sound. And then I can help you troubleshoot. Oh no, load of people can't connect to the Wi-Fi on the day. It's okay. I've seen this many times. I can give you some pointers.
Yeah. Great. Great. Who are the people, Kevin, who kind of helped you kind of along the way? Are there people out there now that you're still in touch with?
Yeah, absolutely. We're talking about Birmingham. I worked with Julia and Nat Higginbottom for a couple of years, who run an agency, a consultancy, a business called Co-Mutiny, previously Rebel Uncut. They do a whole bunch of digital enablement and content creation work. Definitely that pair of individuals. From just, growing technical confidence, strategic thinking, running events. One of the very first events that I had to deliver was not one I organized, but I was there to deliver right at the very, very beginning of doing events. And it was, to this day, the most stressful event I've ever done in my life. And it was right there at the very beginning, which was very good, actually. I wish it wasn't as stressful, but it was a character building, and now I know how to fix a whole bunch of problems or avoid them happening. And I did that with them. They didn't organize it either. They were also dropped in to deliver it with me. Definitely.
They're friends. We're both friends with them as well, and Sweyn has a bit more contact with them now. Have you, Sweyn?
A little bit, not a great deal. I mean, they are all now also Scottish Islanders living in Bernera. But that's a long way from here. Very different.
We must invite them on, actually, because they're doing very interesting things. They've been great support to me as well.
Exactly what you talk about, digital enablement. Helping people become more. I mean, they've gone onto like an island with like population 200, 250, primarily people who lack technical confidence. And they're trying to bring those skills to the island. It's exactly what they've always done, but in the middle of nowhere.
Absolutely.
They seem very happy with
sheep.
it. And
and a shop.
And a shop.
They've got
an
a
honesty
shop now. And buying, the kind of things that you'd miss, I think, if you kind of left a metropolis like Birmingham and went further north. So Kevin, we're going to be coming towards the end of the show now. And we generally ask our guests how they can be contacted online if anybody wants to follow up. So what's the best place to find you online?
I would say probably Twitter, but I'm really open. Anywhere I have an account, I'm always online, unfortunately. So you could probably message me anywhere. But on Twitter, I am @_PHZN for November.
And you can find that in the description of this video. as we speak now.
Yeah,
So there it is.
or you can just email me, kvn@lws.io if you are not a Twitterer, but you like email.
Right. And where does your name come from, Kevin? Because you're obviously
I'm-
an early tweeter.
Yeah, so my original username, and I still use it on some platforms that have minimum character limits or don't allow the underscore, was Phazon Overload, PHAZON OVERLOAD. That actually came from a video game called Metroid, which I have both here on my wrist. I have this little figurine here. And then as I matured on Twitter, as in just like I was more familiar with the platform, I realized that having such a long username is a pain for character limits. So that was why I moved to shorten it. And now I'll take the shortened version where I can. Yeah.
Brilliant. So we're just gonna talk about a few more things we picked up along the way in the last week or so, Kevin, if you don't mind. Please do join in and comment on any of the stories if you like.
Yeah.
So the first one is the UK's a story from CIO.com saying the UK is levelling up, misses the mark on skills and digital poverty. And it quotes Elizabeth Anderson, who's the Chief Operating Officer at the Digital Poverty Alliance. Says the white paper is making some progress, but not going far enough on digital accessibility. She says that there is so much more that government needs to do in its aim to level up before 2030. And digital access runs through many of the 12 missions that Michael Gove has today announced. That was when the article was published in his white paper. She says investing in infrastructure is only one part of the issue. Investing in people, their needs and motivations is as, if not even more, important. She specifically calls out Mission 4, a nationwide gigabit capable broadband and 4G coverage with 5G coverage for the majority of the population, as not tackling broadband affordability and device accessibility. She also said that while Mission 1 would look to increase standards in schools, many children still do not have access to the necessary tools and learning resources, and that these lack of digital skills could later impinge on Mission 1's promise to level up pay and employment. She says the internet is now an essential for many of us in our everyday lives, and the pandemic has accelerated this: how we learn, how we gain new workplace skills, how we do our jobs, how we access healthcare, how we bank, how we shop, even how we report a missed bin collection or pay for a bill. Many of us do this online and don't even think about it. But for many people, none of that is a possibility. And can you imagine how much you're missing out on? Understanding the gap, realizing it's real, and for a huge number of people, and then addressing this, that is the challenge for government. So we bring that to the attention of people listening to this program here, and hope that those discussing leveling up will think about those things. Okay, the next story is from digitalcommunities.gov.wales, telling us how first choice tenants benefit from 197 new digital devices. And this is a housing association, First Choice Housing Association, which is a big player in the housing sector in Wales. And their mission is to improve lives through the delivery of quality designed homes for people with a range of specialist needs, including but not limited to those with disability. They enable tenants to achieve independence, fulfill their potential, and optimize enjoyment of life. And they're saying they're working with Digital Communities Wales and they're offering a chance to work with the Housing Association. Represents a fantastic opportunity to continue promoting the benefits of digital to one digitally underrepresented group in Wales, in particular, those with disabilities or long-term health conditions. And there is a video, but it's 2.39 minutes long. So I think, Sweyn, we'll just put a link in the notes to that for people who want to use it. I thought it was interesting to see what they're doing, and that people themselves who are benefiting from this opportunity are speaking about their own experience, and that's always a very powerful thing to look at. Okay, and so on to a story about the US from marketwatch.com, saying high-speed internet is getting cheaper in America, according to a new study. They're saying that prices tumbled by almost $60 a month on average, or 42%, for customers hooked up with 500 Mbps internet speeds, an ultra-fast category for households, in the past 5 years, according to a new study from Broadband Now. And for slower categories, prices dropped from 14% to 35% on average, with the smallest declines found in the entry-level category at 25 to 99 Mbps speeds, where monthly prices were cut by $8.80 on $8.80 on average. And they're saying while faster speeds may still be a luxury item for many households, it is capable and fiber technology dominating at speeds of at least 200 Mbps, or what many high-speed households enjoy, according to Tyler Cooper, editor-in-chief at Broadband Now, which tracks government data on the nation's digital infrastructure for a consumer audience. Is that something that you think about often, Kevin? Broadband speeds, does it affect the work that you do?
Yes. The ability to, yes, in short, I think that it falls into, for me, as someone who creates a lot of educational content, it falls into thinking about how, like, the modalities in which I produce content. I personally love learning through video. It's how I learn. Not everyone does. Some people need to actually just apply skills, and you just need to kind of guide them through doing it themselves. Some people prefer writing. Some people don't get the choice to take in video content. I think about that a lot, especially in my current role, where I'm given pretty free rein to make sure content that I feel is important is created in a multimodal way. One of the challenges with working with large media files, which has been the case in this role and a couple in the past, is you do need a decent internet connection for this technology to work. And in that way, some people will not be able to access it. Even my little badge, it's an internet connected thing. Some people think it all happens on device. It doesn't. It is connected to the internet. And the moment that is not sufficient, it starts to lag or fails to work. I think just being aware of that and communicating clearly, or knowing what users are not going to be able to access this in quite the right way is key. Yeah,
I mean, I think it's great. What we like covering stories from other parts of the world, because we know that's going to be coming to the UK as well sooner than rather than later, we hope. So we hope to see more of that. And we are having on a future show, we're having Chris Conder from Barn, who's going to talk about high-speed internet in rural areas that she and her the other people at Barn have been able to make happen. In contrast to a lot of the bigger providers. It's great to hear that it's happening, maybe for a group that might have been felt more left out of the developments that are happening. So yeah,
one thing I will say is that there's a trend for developers to use the hot new technology when building their websites and experiences that are internet connected, and that's wonderful when you're on your really, really fast internet. A lot of the time it just absolutely crumbles in the hands of people who have slow internet, and that's something we need to think about more as software developers as well, is how does this work with a degraded internet connection?
Absolutely, yeah.
Before you go, actually, that Zoom, I think, has got right.
Yeah,
I think Zoom copes quite well. Coping as internet connections degrade, it still seems to keep going in a way that other tools that do some of the things do.
And does some automation too, like some automated decision making. Like, hey, you know what, video, great, but you know what's going to make this work? Let's just kill the video for you, and you can turn it back on. But like, this is hogging bandwidth.
Absolutely, yeah. One thing I did want to mention, I'd forgotten about it earlier, was the coincidence, the John Popham coincidence that we noticed with Deepgram. Sweyn, do you want to say a bit about that?
Well, John Popham, for viewers of this program, we remember him fondly. He was based in Huddersfield, and he was a great popularizer of storytelling about digital things in general, and he was also a great champion of making things work online if you couldn't get to them in person. So there's that. But I was contacted in LinkedIn by another John Popham who's based in the States. Yes,
you were.
John E. Popham. So hello to John if he's watching. Who got in touch because he'd noticed this show, I think, and had just wanted to say that he'd sort of been in touch with John previously, and what about this wonderful, lovely thing called Deepgram that he's working on? And here's a video of some guy demonstrating a name badge. And who should that be, Kevin, but yourself? And what should be the case, of course, but that Pauline already knew you, because Pauline, of course, knows everyone. She knows everyone.
It was slightly unnerving for me. So I never, just very much like you and I, Pauline, I knew John. We'd had quite a large quantity of short conversations at civic tech events. And I was following along with his cancer diaries, and I did know he unfortunately died. I remember when that happened. When I started at Deepgram, I think John E. Popham at Deepgram may have even started the same day or really, really close to me. And he didn't have a profile. His profile picture on our internal Slack is not his face. So I had to just go. I just had to like refresh my memory, and I was like, no, John Popham did die. And then he got in touch with me and said, "Oh, I heard you're going on Pauline's show. You should do some more research about that." And I, small world this, and I was really, and that was where he left it. We had a call the next day where I had to just be like, "What do you mean small world?" And it was just that he'd happened to get in touch, but I was convinced all night. I was racking my brain like, are you John Popham Jr.? Like, is there something here that's because the day he started, I already had gone, John Popham, that isn't like a common name.
No, it's not.
I know a John Popham,
Yeah.
and I'd already done that exploration, and he brought it to me again, and I was very, very confused.
Yes.
But yeah, that did happen.
It was a really nice story to end on. I did tell John's family that we were going to mention this coincidence, and so hopefully they're listening and
I think John.
enjoy the story.
I think John Popham of Huddersfield would have been very amused.
I think you would as well. I'm sorry, Kevin, we didn't get a chance to talk to you about your experiences of our John Popham, but I'm sure they were all happy as most of ours are as well. So that's great. Okay, and we are just a minute over. So thanks very much, Kevin, again for joining us. Thanks for telling us all the interesting things you did. And please, we will watch with interest about the development of the transcription and translation device. And maybe you'll be on the show again in a few months' time. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's been awesome chatting. Real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye-bye now.